I wish I could go back and talk to my 25-year-old self about money. The conversation wouldn't be long. I'd skip the lectures and the guilt trips, just share a few things that would have changed everything. Things that seem obvious now, but took decades of mistakes, regrets, and slowly accumulated wisdom to understand. Here's what's strange. Most of what I know about money now, I could have learned at 25. The information existed, people tried to tell me, I just wasn't ready to hear it. I thought I knew better, thought my situation was different, thought I had time. I didn't have as much time as I thought. Nobody does. If you're watching this at 25 or 35 or even 45, you're probably making some of the same mistakes I made. This isn't because you're foolish. I wasn't foolish either. But certain truths about money only become real when you've lived long enough to see the consequences unfold. This video contains the money lessons that took me 45 years to learn. Some of them I learned through success. Most of them I learned through failure. All of them I wish I'd understood sooner. You have an advantage I didn't have. Someone willing to tell you what's coming before it arrives. Whether you listen is up to you. I probably wouldn't have listened at your age, but maybe you're smarter than I was. Let's find out. The first lesson took the longest to learn. Time is the only resource you can't earn more of. In my 20s, I traded time for money constantly. Overtime, extra shifts, sacrificed weekends. I told myself I was building something. And I was, sort of. But I was also spending a non-renewable resource as if it were infinite. I missed things. Weddings I could have attended. Trips I could have taken. Relationships I could have nurtured. Hours with family members who aren't here anymore. I kept telling myself I'd have time later, once I had more money, once things stabilized. Later came. The money arrived. But the time I'd spent was gone, and some of what I'd missed could never be recovered. Here's what I understand now that I didn't understand then. Money exists to buy time, not the other way around. The goal isn't to accumulate the maximum possible dollars before you die. Instead, it's reaching a point where your time belongs to you, and then actually using that time for things that matter. I know people with millions who still trade their time as if they're broke. They won the financial game and then forgot to stop playing. Resources to do anything, habits to do nothing but keep accumulating. Don't become that person. Money is a tool. Time is the point. Every financial decision should ultimately serve the goal of reclaiming your time and spending it intentionally. The second lesson humbled me repeatedly. You are not as special as you think you are. In my 30s, I was convinced I was smarter than average. I thought I could pick stocks, time markets, identify opportunities others missed. Some early successes confirmed this belief, the most dangerous kind of reinforcement. Then I learned what most people eventually learn. Those early successes were mostly luck disguised as skill. When confidence led me to bigger bets, I lost money I couldn't afford to lose. Investments I was certain about went to zero. Market timing that seemed obvious in retrospect was invisible in real time. The research is overwhelming. Most professional fund managers, people who do this full-time with teams of analysts and proprietary data, fail to beat simple index funds over the long term. If they can't do it consistently, what made me think I could? Accepting my own ordinariness was painful but liberating. I stopped trying to be clever and started being consistent. Index funds replaced stock picks. Automated contributions replaced market timing. I focused on what I could control: savings rate, diversification, costs, and accepted that market returns were out of my hands. My returns improved. The reason wasn't increased intelligence, but decreased ego. I stopped letting pride make decisions. The third lesson seems obvious until you live it. Spending adapts to fill available income. Every raise in my 20s and 30s came with certainty that I'd save the extra money. And every time, without consciously deciding otherwise, I found ways to spend it. The apartment got nicer, the car got newer, the restaurants got fancier. None of this felt irresponsible. Each upgrade seemed reasonable. I was earning more. Didn't I deserve to live better? But the result was a savings rate that stayed roughly constant while lifestyle costs grew. I was on a treadmill, running faster without getting ahead. This is lifestyle inflation, and it's almost invisible while it's happening. Each purchase feels justified in isolation. The pattern only becomes visible in retrospect, when you realize that someone earning half your current salary has somehow accumulated more wealth than you. The fix I eventually discovered was pre-committing raises before they arrived. When I knew a raise was coming, I'd increase my retirement contribution or automatic savings transfer before the new money hit my account. The extra income was redirected before I ever experienced having it. You can't spend what you never see. Intercept the money before it reaches the pool you spend from. The fourth lesson cost me relationships. Lending money to family or friends rarely ends well unless you're prepared to give it away. I learned this one the hard way, multiple times. I lent money to people I cared about, expected repayment, and watched the debt corrode the relationship from the inside. The dynamic is predictable. The borrower feels guilty and starts avoiding you. You feel resentful and start interpreting their purchases as evidence they could be paying you back. Every interaction becomes colored by the unspoken debt. Eventually, you're creditor and debtor instead of friends or family, playing roles that poison everything. Now I have a simple policy. If someone I care about needs money and I can afford to help, I give it as a gift with no expectation of return. I say it explicitly. This is a gift. I don't want it back. I don't want you to feel obligated. If you're ever in a position to pay it forward to someone else, do that instead. When I can't afford to give it as a gift, I say no. No loans, no payment plans, no slowly eroding relationships over money. This policy has saved more friendships than any amount of generosity would have. The fifth lesson required decades to fully understand. Cheap things often cost more than expensive things. In my 20s, I bought the cheapest version of everything. $30 shoes, discount furniture, no-name tools. I thought I was being financially responsible, but those $30 shoes wore out in 3 months. The furniture broke within a year. The tools failed when I actually needed them. I spent more replacing cheap things than I would have spent buying quality once. This doesn't mean expensive is always better. Plenty of expensive things are overpriced garbage. The lesson is about cost per use rather than sticker price. A $300 pair of boots worn for 10 years costs $30 per year. A $50 pair replaced every 6 months costs $100 per year. The expensive boots were actually cheaper, plus more comfortable, more reliable, and better looking. Now I ask different questions before purchasing. How long will this last? How often will I use it? What's the cost per use? For things I'll use frequently over years, I buy the best I can afford. For things I'll rarely use, I buy cheap or borrow. The shift from purchase price thinking to cost per use thinking saved me thousands over the years. The sixth lesson seems counterintuitive until you've lived it. Security feels better than luxury ever did. I've had periods of my life with expensive things and no savings. I've had periods with modest things and substantial savings. The second felt dramatically better. Luxury paired with financial insecurity is exhausting. You're enjoying nice things while worrying about how to maintain them. Every unexpected expense feels threatening. The nice car sits in the driveway while you're anxious about the credit card bill. Modest living paired with financial security is peaceful. You know you can handle surprises. Options exist. You're not rich, but you're not scared either. The baseline of your emotional life is calm rather than anxious. I'd rather drive a 10-year-old car with a fully funded emergency fund than a new car with nothing in savings. The new car provides status for a few months, then becomes normal. Security provides peace every single day. Status seeking is a game with no winning. Security seeking has a finish line, and crossing it feels better than any purchase ever did. The seventh lesson revealed itself slowly. Most financial problems are behavior problems wearing financial disguises. For years, I thought my money problems were about math. Insufficient income, unexpected expenses, bad timing. If I just earned more or spent less, everything would be fine. But earning more created new problems. Cutting spending in one category just increased spending elsewhere. The math changed while the outcome didn't. Eventually, I realized my money problems weren't really about money. They were about emotional spending, identity needs, relationship dynamics, stress management, and a dozen other behavioral patterns expressing themselves through financial transactions. The overspending wasn't random. It followed emotional patterns I hadn't examined. Stress triggered online shopping. Insecurity triggered purchases meant to impress others. Boredom triggered spending as entertainment. Until I addressed the behavioral roots, no budget worked for long. Willpower alone can't override deep emotional patterns indefinitely. I had to understand why I was spending before I could change how I was spending. This is why financial literacy matters so much. Understanding the psychology that determines what you actually do with money, not just knowing what you should do with it. The eighth lesson took failures to teach. Investing is simple, but executing is hard. The mechanics of investing are straightforward. Buy low-cost index funds, contribute regularly, leave it alone for decades. Don't panic when markets drop. Anyone can understand this in 5 minutes. Actually doing it is another matter entirely. I understood the mechanics in my 20s. I still made emotional decisions for the next 15 years. Sold during downturns because it felt prudent. Chased hot investments because everyone else was making money. Checked my portfolio daily and let short-term movements affect my mood. The intellectual understanding and the behavioral execution existed in completely separate parts of my brain. Knowing what to do and doing it under pressure are different skills entirely. What finally helped was automation combined with intentional ignorance. I automated investments so they happened without decisions. I stopped checking my portfolio more than quarterly. I deleted the brokerage app from my phone. Making emotional decisions became structurally difficult. The best investors I know aren't the smartest about markets. They're the best at controlling their own behavior, building systems that protect portfolios from their own worst instincts. The ninth lesson involves opportunity cost. Money spent today is worth dramatically more than you think. When I was 25, $100 was just $100. I spent it without considering what that same money could become over time. Here's the math I wish I'd internalized earlier. At 7% real returns, money roughly doubles every 10 years. That $100 at 25 becomes $200 at 35, $400 at 45, $800 at 55, $1,600 at 65. Every $100 I spent casually at 25 cost me $1,600 in retirement. No failure or mistake required, just the pure mathematics of compound growth. I'm not saying you should never spend money when you're young. Joy and experience have value. What I am saying is that you should understand what you're actually spending. That $50 dinner isn't $50. It's $400 of future wealth converted into a meal you'll forget by next week. Young people think they'll make it up later with higher income. Sometimes they do. Usually, lifestyle inflation absorbs the higher income, and the catching up never happens. Money invested young works for you longer. There's no making up for lost decades. Start now, even with small amounts, and let time do what only time can do. The 10th lesson required watching others. The most expensive purchases are those requiring additional purchases. A boat requires a trailer, storage, insurance, maintenance, accessories, and fuel. A swimming pool requires chemicals, heating, cleaning, repairs, and increased insurance. A vacation home requires furnishing, utilities, upkeep, property taxes, and travel costs to actually use it. These cascading costs often exceed the original purchase. The $30,000 boat costs $50,000 over 5 years. The $40,000 pool costs $70,000 over a decade. The purchase price is just the entry fee for an ongoing expense category. I've watched people buy things they could afford and then struggle with ongoing costs they hadn't anticipated. The purchase seemed reasonable in isolation, but created a permanent drain they couldn't escape without selling, often at a loss. Before any major purchase now, I calculate total cost of ownership, the full expense of keeping, maintaining, insuring, and supporting the item over its lifetime, not just the sticker price. That calculation has stopped me from making purchases that would have quietly bled my finances for years. Keeping track of all the ways money leaves your accounts is genuinely difficult. The obvious expenses are just the beginning. There's an entire ecosystem of costs that attaches to the things you own. Recognizing this pattern has been one of the most valuable financial skills I've developed. The 11th lesson humbled me. Nobody cares about your expensive things as much as you think they do. In my 30s, I bought things partly to impress others. The watch, the car, the renovations. I told myself these purchases were for me, but honestly, I wanted others to notice and think well of me. Here's what I learned. Other people barely notice. They're too busy thinking about themselves and their own status signals. The watch you agonized over gets a passing glance. The car you financed beyond your means gets noticed for 30 seconds by your neighbor, who then goes back to worrying about his own finances. And the people who do notice and judge you by your possessions, those aren't people whose opinions matter anyway. The shift for me was realizing that status through stuff is a losing game. The goalposts always move. Something nicer always exists that you don't have. Someone else always has more. You can't win by playing, only by refusing to play. I still buy nice things occasionally, but the motivation changed. Now I buy for personal enjoyment and utility rather than perception. Surprisingly, this shift made me buy less. Much of my previous spending had been performance rather than preference. The 12th lesson applies to everything. Automation beats intention every single time. For 20 years, I relied on intentions. Intended to save more. Intended to invest consistently. Intended to pay off debt faster. Intended to track my spending. Intentions rarely became actions. Life got busy, priorities shifted, the thing I intended to do got pushed to tomorrow, then next week, then never. What changed my finances wasn't better intentions, it was better systems. I automated everything possible. Savings happened automatically on payday. Investments purchased automatically every month. Bills paid automatically on due dates. The me who sets up systems can overrule the me who makes daily decisions. System me knows that daily me will be tired, distracted, emotional, and inconsistent. So system me creates structures that don't require daily me to perform. The financially successful people I know don't have superhuman discipline. They have well-designed systems that make success the default and failure the exception. They understood, as I eventually understood, that you can't rely on yourself to make good decisions consistently. You can rely on automated systems that remove decisions entirely. The 13th lesson took decades to fully appreciate. Financial health affects every other kind of health. When I was financially stressed, and I was financially stressed for years, it affected everything else. Sleep quality declined. Relationships suffered. Work performance dropped. Physical health deteriorated through stress eating and skipped exercise. Financial problems are never just financial problems. They're marriage problems, health problems, career problems, and mental health problems that happen to originate in bank accounts. Conversely, financial stability created space for everything else to improve. When money worries receded, I slept better, treated people better, worked better, and took better care of myself. Energy I'd been spending on financial anxiety became available for everything else. This is why I take financial health seriously, even when individual dollars seem small. It's not about the money itself. It's about what financial stress does to entire lives. The $50 savings doesn't seem significant until you understand that accumulated stability changes your baseline emotional state. Getting your finances in order is healthcare, relationship maintenance, and career development all at once. The 14th lesson surprised me. Enough is a specific number rather than a feeling. For most of my life, I assumed I'd know when I had enough. I'd reach some level of wealth and naturally feel satisfied. The striving would end. The anxiety would lift. I'd arrive. That's not how it works. Without a defined number, enough never arrives. Every level of wealth reveals a new level to aspire to. The goalposts move faster than you can run toward them. People with $10 million feel just as not enough as people with $1 million. What changed was defining my specific enough, the amount that would let me live the life I actually want without working unless I choose to. I calculated it based on actual annual expenses times 25, a standard safe withdrawal rate calculation. Once that number existed, it became achievable. A specific target with measurable progress rather than a vague aspiration. When I hit 70% of the number, I knew exactly where I stood. The unknown became known. Most people never define their number. They're running toward a finish line that doesn't exist, which guarantees they'll run forever without arriving. Define yours. Make it specific. Then you'll know when you've won and can actually stop playing. The 15th lesson took the full 45 years. Money is a means rather than an end. This sounds like a cliche until you live it from both directions. I've had periods with money and no life, working constantly, accumulating steadily, but missing everything that accumulation was supposed to enable. The bank account grew while experiences didn't. I've had periods with life and no money, present for what mattered, experiencing what was available, but anxious about how long it could last. Rich in everything except security. The goal, which took most of a lifetime to clearly see, is money in service of life. Enough resources to create security and enable experiences without letting the pursuit of resources consume the experiences it was meant to enable. This balance is personal. Some people need more security to feel free. Others need less money to be happy. There's no universal answer, but there is a universal mistake: treating the means as the end, accumulating for accumulation's sake, forgetting what money was supposed to be for. You are not your net worth. Money is not the point. Time with people you love, work that means something, experiences that expand you, contribution that outlasts you, those are the point. Money is just the tool that makes more of those things possible. Don't spend your life earning money to spend your life. Earn enough to live, then actually live. These lessons took 45 years because understanding something intellectually is different from understanding it in your bones. You can read every lesson in this video and still need to learn them yourself through experience. That's how humans work. We hear advice, nod along, and then make the mistakes anyway until the consequences become undeniable. But maybe, just maybe, hearing them from someone who's already lived them creates a small head start. Maybe you'll recognize yourself in one of these patterns and change course a year sooner than you would have otherwise. Maybe you'll sidestep one mistake that would have taken 5 years to recover from. That's worth something. A year gained here, 5 years saved there. It compounds the same way money compounds. Everything in this video is financial literacy applied across a full lifetime. The strategies that matter at 25 are different from those that matter at 45 or 65, but the underlying principles, time value, behavior management, automation, defining enough, remembering what money is actually for, these remain constant across every stage. Most financial content focuses on specific tactics: which accounts to use, which investments to buy, how to save on taxes. That matters. But tactics without principles lead to confused action. You need both, the specific moves and the general framework that tells you which moves matter when. I made a complete breakdown of financial literacy that covers both, the principles that remain constant and the tactics that change with your situation. If these lessons resonated, if you saw your current self in my past mistakes, that video will give you the framework to avoid spending decades learning what you could understand much sooner. Because here's what I know at 45 that I didn't know at 25. Time moves faster than you expect. The decades between now and your future self will pass quicker than you can imagine. What you do with your money during that time will determine what choices you have when you arrive. You don't have to make the same mistakes I made. You can learn from my 45 years without living them. That's the advantage of wisdom shared. It transfers without requiring the full cost of acquisition. Most people watching this will find it interesting, recognize some patterns, and then continue exactly as they were. That's human nature. Advice rarely changes behavior until consequences make it unavoidable. But some people watching this will be different. They'll take one lesson seriously. They'll automate something they've been intending to automate. They'll define their enough. They'll stop chasing status and start building security. If that's you, if you're the one who actually changes something, you'll be grateful at 45 that you listened at whatever age you are now. I wish someone had told me these things. Someone probably did. I just wasn't ready to hear it. Maybe you are.